Welcome to From the Clinic to the Courtroom, Health Law Unpacked.
Hello and welcome to From the Clinic to the Courtroom, Health Law Unpacked with attorney Maria T. Santi, founder and managing partner of the health and medicine law firm. Maria and the team are focused on providing exceptional legal services with efficiency, accuracy, attention to detail, and high work ethic. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is From Denial to Justice, Legal Steps to Take When Your Emergency Care Isn't Covered. Maria, so good to have you here. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me again. Good to be here.
All right. So in your experience, how often do insurance companies deny claims for emergency room visits?
So emergency room visit denials don't happen as often because there is a federal law, EMTALA, that it doesn't allow any medical provider to refuse emergency treatment. But it does happen every now and then where a patient will go to the emergency room for a condition, and then the health insurance company after the fact will say, this isn't covered because it wasn't a real emergency, or this wasn't covered because there's an exclusion, or this wasn't covered because it's related to your cosmetic surgery. And then even though they were technically emergency services. So it does happen, but not as often as other claims may get denied.
Seems like it shouldn't matter why the emergency's there, but if the emergency's there, you need the treatment, whether it's cosmetic or an accident or whatever, you need it.
Yes, but you'd be surprised.
I wouldn't, but I'd be angered.
Oh, yes.
I mean, what situations I'm trying to think of a situation where you could say, oh, well, that wasn't necessary. I mean, most of the time people go to the emergency room because the emergency room is expensive, at least for my health plan. It's expensive to go to the emergency room, so I'm not going unless I really need to.
Yeah, you don't go there unless you're dying and you need someone to save your life. So the fact that they would deny anything is pretty crazy and inhumane, I think. But they have done that. And I know you asked for like a situation where that happens. I can speak to a specific case, and this is all public record. And I'm hoping that this shines a light on all these things, because I do have a track record of all these denials, and these cases are in public records. Hopefully one day I'll talk to, my legislators about this. But basically, the example I'll give you is there was a lady that she had gotten some surgery to remove excess skin after she lost a lot of weight. And the health insurance company said, well, that's cosmetic. That's not something necessary. So she said, okay, fine, I'll just pay for it because she has all this excess skin. And then apparently she got really sick after that happened. I don't know exactly if there were complications because of it, but anything can happen after you get any kind of surgery.
Sure, there's always a chance of infection or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it can really be anything. But the health insurance company said, well, this has to do with your cosmetic surgery, so we're not paying for it. And she almost died. Like, the hospital saved her life, the doctor saved her life, and they billed the claims. It was about $70,000. And the insurance company, the health insurance company, refused to pay for the services. And they fought it in court, argued technicalities. Ultimately, the court agreed with them. And it was because it was the ERISA law, which, again, I'll talk about that another time. But that is one instance where they did not cover it, and they just washed their hands with it and said it wasn't an emergency, that it was an exclusion, and basically said, we're going to pay for the, when you go into the emergency room, you go into like the little section and they see you first.
Like the triage or whatever?
Yeah, the triage.
Yeah.
So they were like, we'll pay for that, but we're not paying for anything else.
Thanks.
Oh, it's like, okay, they were emergency services. And that's something that only with, legislative changes can we make a difference in that kind of situation and those kinds of policies, how they write them.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, how do they determine whether it's medically necessary?
Okay, so they have a medical director in-house, and then the medical director will determine if it was medically necessary based on their assessment of the medical records. They don't even look at the patient. So they're just looking at paperwork. That's what they do.
And so it's just there's like maybe a spreadsheet. Okay, if this, then this gets denied, and if this, then this gets approved. Yeah,
pretty much. They look at the patient records, and they look at their policy, and they say, well, it's not medically necessary because box 1 isn't checked or box 2 doesn't fit, and that's our determination. If that were the real world, to be honest with you, they would be committing malpractice. Like every single time they're denying something that a patient actually needs, that would be malpractice. But because it's cloaked as, health insurance, they're allowed to deny it.
Can you kind of walk us through the process that a patient follows if their emergency room expenses are denied? What are some of those key legal steps you take to challenge a denial like that? And is it different than a regular, a different type of a case?
It's not really different. It's pretty much the same thing where we look first at the denial letter. Why was this denied? We look at the policy. We look at the terms and conditions. And depending on that, some may be favorable than others. And again, these denials are always going to be like post-treatment because they can't not see a patient for medical treatment. So at that point, we're just looking at the denial letter, the policy, and the medical bills, and then assessing the laws that apply to that specific case to see what can be done. And most of the time, those do have to be covered.
Can you talk about the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act? I understand that they're supposed to help safeguard patients, at least from being denied the emergency care, right? Or is that related to the coverage? Can you kind of talk about that?
As everyone knows it, that's the EMTALA law. And that's the law that I was talking about earlier, that if a patient presents to an emergency room, they have to be treated. They cannot be denied treatment. As far as the coverage goes, that is going to be dictated by the health insurance policies. But I mean, that's typically not something that should be getting denied because under the Affordable Care Act, emergency services must be covered. If you want to get technical, that's what insurance defense lawyers are going to be doing, which again, I think is extremely inhumane. And I don't mind saying that because it's just the truth. So like you said in another episode about transparency, here's another situation where there's a lack of transparency. So if there's a contract between, let's say, a hospital and a health insurance company, that hospital will say, for example, that contract may say that emergency services must be covered from the time that the patient is admitted all throughout the admission period. So the health insurance company, let's say they might deny those emergency services, but the contract with the hospital says they have to pay for it. That's not something the insurance company will ever give you. So if they can basically be sitting and hiding on that, not disclosing that, and you would never know that they are obligated to pay for this unless you get a copy of that contract. Well, you're never going to see that and if you file legal action, and even then they're going to fight not to give it to you and say that it's a trade secret. So that's like another little, under the table thing that happened. But I'll tell you, if they know that that's in there and you sue them, they're not going to fight you on getting this covered.
What are the chances of denials being overturned in these particular emergency room denials? Is it higher or lower than what we've talked about in the past?
So yeah, I think there would be a higher chance of overturning this because of the laws that we have to protect patients, such as the Affordable Care Act, EMTALA. There's also state laws that will have their own laws as to emergency services. So most of the times those will get overturned. If they don't, and you have to, again, take legal action, then the chances are that that's going to get resolved rather quickly because it was an emergency.
Okay. You mentioned before that really the only way is to make true changes is to change the law, to do legislative action. Given the growing issue of insurance denials for emergency care, what legal reforms or changes do you believe are necessary in order to ensure patients are fairly covered and protected?
So when I said that, I was thinking more on the ERISA law side, which is employer-sponsored plans that is subject to that federal law. And the changes there that are necessary, I'll just give you a brief overview, is just basically taking away the discretion that is given to these health insurance companies for these employer plans and letting them do whatever they want. There has to be a little bit more of oversight there because the way that the law is right now in that part, that aspect of the law, they're basically allowed to use their discretion in denying any claims. And then if they met the elements, there's about 6 of them, to make a decision on that claim, and they say, oh no, we followed our procedures, we didn't do anything wrong, then most likely the court is going to say that they're right, they didn't do anything wrong, because that's just what the law is right now. So that really doesn't look at what the patient really needs, what the doctor is saying, the treatment, like how much the patient may be suffering because of delays. So it's something that I think needs to just have a little more oversight, and they shouldn't be given so much leeway when they're supposed to be acting in the best interest of the patients that have these policies in the first place. I know it's kind of a general answer, but
no, it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to take a cynical approach when it comes to health insurance. I mean, I think we all, I rarely talk to someone who has a dealing with health insurance and be like, wow, that was great. Like that worked really well. Like they covered everything I needed and everything is great. Yay. Awesome. Way to go. Healthcare provider, health insurance provider. So I feel like there's a need and a desire for most people that for reform, but is it really just about the power and the political affiliations and the lobbying and all of that stuff? Does it make it really hard for the rest of us to lobby for change?
I think that is a big part of it, because they do have a very strong lobby and just lobbying groups that are protecting the financial interests of these companies. So they're not looking really at the interest of the people as far as their medical conditions. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you would say, yes, they are, but no, they're not. They're looking at the bottom line and they're looking at efficiency. And the fact of the matter is that every person is different and not every person fits into a mold. So that's what doctors are supposed to do. So that's another thing, like they need to allow, like doctors are, their rights are also being taken away because they're not allowed to be doctors. So it's hard because even them, the lobbying that goes on, I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely. I mean, there's people out there who think that it's one of the more powerful lobbies out there, the insurance lobby, and that it really controls a lot more of the decisions that the government makes than we even realize.
Yes. Yeah. Because you don't really know what's, going on behind the scenes, and they're not looking, like I said, they're looking at the mechanical part, which is fine in corporate America because that's part of it. But in this sector, I mean, you can't forget that you're dealing with human beings. So there just has to be, like, I feel like that's part of the reason also why I do what I do, more patient advocacy, as far as patients standing up for their rights and saying, well, this isn't right. And they take legal action, and they're actually either going to change the law one case at a time or as a group, as we have seen in some class action cases that has happened. So I think like little by little that will eventually hopefully make a difference.
Do you get a lot of cases of emergency room denials?
Not as much as before. I used to get more, but I think they have maybe done a better job getting those types of cases approved. But it still does happen, but not as often.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. It might be one of the few positive things that we've been able to say. Any particular reason that you think that is? Because
of the Affordable Care Act, because it does say that. So the Affordable Care Act has essential health benefits, and that's one of the ones that is an essential health benefit that a health insurance company has to cover. So also from a policy perspective, like I said before, every state is going to have different laws. If you go to court and say, well, this treatment was provided to save their life, I mean, what kind of defense are you going to have against that? It's just, I don't think technicalities are going to work very well when you're saying, when patients' lives are being saved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's no reason not to cover this. What we see more though is, I'll go into this since you mentioned a little bit about emergency care. With the No Surprises Act, that sort of took the patient out of the middle, because with that law, what happens is that when a patient goes to a hospital now, they have to pay everything as it was in network. So if there was an out-of-network doctor, now they're the ones that are underpaid, and then they have to sue the health insurance company directly to try to get paid for saving someone's life.
Wow.
Yes.
That's terrifying, isn't it?
It is.
How do you keep a level head and not get beyond frustrated with the system? How can you hold it together? Because I feel like I would just rage all the time. Yes.
I mean, sometimes it does get really frustrating, but I just try to keep my emotional side in check, where I don't get emotionally invested. I just see, okay, well, I'm a tool here. There's a problem and I'm a tool, and I'm just trying to solve this problem the best I can for the patient. I just can't get emotionally invested as if it were me, because if I would do that, then I would not be able to keep a level head, and then other than that, I just, try to do things that I love, like horseback riding or meditation or just traveling, to keep it well-rounded, because it does get heavy sometimes when you see how the system is working against people and against doctors that are saving people's lives. Like I said before, as a human being, I understand it under the law, but as a human being, I will never understand why that is allowed. Like it's not humane at all.
Right. Well, kudos. We're all very glad you do what you do, because it can't be easy. And thank you for tuning into From the Clinic to the Courtroom, Health Law Unpacked with Maria T. Santi. To connect with Maria and the team, head to healthandmedicinelawfirm.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Maria, it's always great having you here. Thanks so much for all the conversation.
Thank you as well.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.